for inviting me. Judy has heard me many times and she still invited me to come. It's awesome. I discovered our age group. We are seen agers, which is senior teenagers. We have everything we wanted as a teenager, only 50 or 60 years later. We don't have to go to school. We get a monthly allowance. We have our own pad. We don't have a curfew. We have a driver's license and a car. Brains of older people are slow because they know so much. Older people often go to another room to get something, and when they get there, they stand there wondering what they came in for. It is not, and I repeat, it is not a memory problem. It's nature's way of making older people do more exercise. Now, what does all of this have to do with the Upton Association and the Upton House? Absolutely nothing. I just wanted to share that with you. I was born and raised in Warren, Ohio. I am a product of Warren City Schools. I graduated in 1960. Now that'll tell you how old I am. I'm ancient. And went directly to Second National Bank and stayed there for 43 short years. Historic places have always interested me. But even though I lived in Warren all my life, up until 30-some years ago, I never heard of Harriet Taylor Upton or the Upton House. The house was built in 1840 by General Simon Perkins. Mr. Perkins was the land agent for the Connecticut Western Reserve. Warren, Ohio was the capital. Mr. Perkins was the land agent of the Western Reserve, which consisted of 3.3 million acres. Poor Mr. Perkins. He could pay for your roof. In 1872, Harriet's father, Ezra, purchased the home for $8,000. Harriet lived there with her mother, father, and her brother. Harriet's father was a judge and a congressman. Because of her father's work, she became involved in the political world, and she was highly respected. In 1884, she married George Upton, who was an attorney in Warren. In 1924, she ran for Congress, but was defeated. She, along with her home on Mahoning Avenue, is a major part of Warren's history and the history for our country. How many of you been to the Upton House? I know Judy has. So Judy will just go along with me. The rest of you, you've never been there. You'll just believe what I tell you. Cool. Now, a little bit about Harriet. She was born in Ravenna, Ohio in 1854. And in 1862, she and her family moved to Warren. Harriet was also a product of Warren City Schools, graduating in 1873. So now you know we were not in the same class. She accomplished many things. She was treasurer of the National Women's Suffrage Association, first woman vice chair of the National Republican Executive Committee, a founding member of the National League of Women Voters, instrumental in the passage of the first child labor law, president of Ohio Women's Suffrage Association. She was the founder of the local DAR chapter. She was the founder and first president of Warren's American Red Cross chapter. She was the first elected woman to the Warren Board of Education and served as president. Now, I told you what she did. I can't tell you what she did in her spare time, because I don't think there was any spare time. Harriet did not support the women's suffrage movement. Her father did, her mother did, her brother did, her husband did. She did not. She did not feel women should have the right to vote. So can you imagine the discussions in the Upton House? Woo-hoo. I bet they were hot and heavy. The home was given after Harriet's mother passed away. Her father remarried, and he gave the Upton House to Harriet as a wedding present. I have 2 daughters. When they got married, we probably gave them a set of towels or a pot and pan or something, I don't know. But anyway, she received this house. She lived there with her husband. They had no children. After he passed away, Harriet took out a hefty mortgage on the house located at 380 Mahoning Avenue. She invested that money in real estate throughout Warren on rental properties. The Great Depression came along. The renters could not pay the rent. Harriet could not pay the mortgage. And in 1931, Harriet lost her home. Her home was sold at a sheriff's sale. All of her belongings were taken out to the front porch and auctioned off. Harriet left Warren with nothing. Even her books were sold. She moved to California to live with a cousin. In 1945, she passed away. There was not money for a formal funeral. She was cremated and buried in a pauper's grave in Pasadena. I get ahead of my notes here. She was 90 years old when she passed away. In 1988, the historic Upton House was slated to be demolished. It was going to be sold to a concern in Cleveland. They were going to tear it down, and they were going to build a 3-story office building. Now, if you've ever been to Warren, you know we don't need another office building. We have plenty. So there was a group of us, there were 5 of us, that knew each other through work and school and so forth. We decided there was too much history to let this house go. So now we're going to raise the money to save this house. We met in the basement of the YWCA. We're sitting around the table. I looked at this group. Not one of us had a dime to our name, and we're gonna save this house. The selling price was $160,000 in 1988. To raise that kind of money today would be difficult. It was difficulter in 1988. At that time, Zell Draz owned the Tribune. The Tribune is our local newspaper. Her grandmother and Harriet were the best of friends. Zell said to us, I will give you $80,000 if you raise $80,000. So I said to her, does it matter how we get this money? And she said, as long as I don't see your picture on the front page of my paper. Ooh, okay, I'm not gonna kill anybody for this money. So I worked, as I said, I worked at Second National Bank. I was able to secure a $50,000 loan. And then we went out, and we are really experts at this. Crying, sobbing, begging, and we raised $30,000. Now we have $160,000. We bought this house that was divided into 5 apartments. There was plumbing, bathtubs, toilets in very, very strange places. Now we don't even have a dime to our name. So we were able to open up the front portion of the house. The back portion, the house is rather large. It grows when you get in there. The back portion had 3 of the apartments, and we kept those tenants. We kept the apartments because we needed the money. If you don't pay your light bill, Ohio Edison has no humor. You know, they don't care. They just want your bill paid. So we needed that income, but we had this front portion of the house, and we went out and we sobbed and we begged and we cried, and we raised $1,000 per room. We had the library, the front hall, the parlor, the dining room, the 3 bedrooms upstairs, and the upstairs hallway. And we raised $1,000 per room, and that took care of ripping out the unnecessary walls and taking out the plumbing and so forth. Then we had a designer showcase. Designers came in and they bid what room they wanted to decorate. They came in, they put gorgeous wallpaper on the walls and window treatments and brought all their good stuff in and crammed that house. It was awesome. It was open to the public for 3 weeks because we needed the exposure so people knew what we were trying to do. We made a little bit of money, not a whole lot, but we were more interested in the exposure. After 3 weeks, the designers came back in, they had their nerve, they took everything back, which we knew they were gonna do. So now we have a house, beautiful wallpaper, window treatments, and I'm not exaggerating, we did not even have a folding chair, and we had no money. Over time, when you tour the Upton House, everything that's in there has been donated through community members. It's all antique furniture. We are not a museum. You can rent the house for weddings, showers, family reunions, graduation parties, and we have the nerve to charge you $100. Ooh, you're supposed to go, ooh, yeah, ooh. And fortunately, that helps, that's a major part of our budget, and the house is rented almost every weekend. So, and fortunately, we have never had damage or anything taken. When people rent the house, they respect what the house was for and what it represents. I'm way ahead, oh boy. In 1993, as Judy said, we secured the status of becoming a National Historic Landmark, which was a lot of work, but that's okay. We continued the 3 apartments in the back, and then as money allowed, we would, when the agreement with the renter was up, we would take over that portion of the house. Now we have the whole house. We don't have any renters at all. And we are totally debt-free. We have been for years. The only thing we owe is when the light bill comes in. Let's see. I don't want to leave out anything. The first piece of furniture that we acquired is a very, very large desk. It's probably 3 times as big as that desk. And it belonged to Zeldraz's grandmother. And she had that in her office at the Tribune. And it's now on display. We do have one room that is a museum, and that's where that is housed. We have 2 pieces of furniture that did belong to Harriet, that was sold at the auction and came back to us when we started the restoration of her home. One is a very large pier mirror in the parlor and a chaise lounge in the master bedroom upstairs. Several years ago, the Tribune was cleaning out their basement. They came across 3 boxes tucked way back somewhere, pulled them out, and they were all Harriet's books that Zeldraz's grandmother had purchased at the sale. And they gave them back to us, and we have them in the library of the Upton. And they're really cool because there's a lot of handwritten notes from Harriet. During Harriet's life at 380 Mahoning Avenue, the house became the temporary center of the National American Women's Suffrage Association. So it was there for almost 10 years. This was in 1903. During this time, many celebrities were entertained in the Upton House because of her involvement, because of her father, because of her brother, or her husband. Among those were President Garfield, President Cleveland, President Hayes, President McKinley, President Harrison, Susan B. Anthony, Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, and in more recent years, Barbara Bush. When you decide to tour the Upton, I'll add your names to that list. As I said, over the years, we've acquired many beautiful antiques, and we do average rentals almost every weekend. We feel the house has gone from rags to riches. I have to say, the inside of the Upton is absolutely gorgeous. It is beautiful. We also have, sits on a rather, for downtown, it's right 1 block up from the square. And for a downtown property, it has a beautiful back garden. And people love to rent the house and use the gardens. When we first acquired the house, it was like a jungle back there. And now, 30 plus years, it truly is magnificent. We are a total volunteer organization, although at every board meeting, someone makes a motion that we receive a raise, and it's approved, but if you're making 0, you end up with 0. In 1998, the Upton Association brought Barbara Bush to Warren, Ohio. It was almost 2 years in the making. She read stories to 50 children at the library, which is right across the street from the Upton House. And she spoke at the Packard Music Hall. One person had to be cleared for that event, and it was me. And she still came. Pretty scary. I was her escort for the day. Did you want to touch my hand? And it was awesome. We were to come, I was dressed a little, I had a suit and, under the lapel, the Secret Service put a little gizmo-y thing under there. And I said, ooh, I was impressed. He said, don't be impressed, it's not you. You're gonna be with her, we need to know where she is. Oh, well, okay, that's fine. So we were to come through the house after the library. We were to come through the house, go out to the terrace, and come around and get in with the Secret Service to go to the Packard Music Hall. So in my weak brain, I'm thinking, oh, there's gonna be a huge limo, and it was a Chevy Lumina. That's okay, that's all right. So we started and went up to the music hall, which I don't know if any of you have been to the Packard Music Hall. It holds 2,500 people. We had standing room only around the balcony. There was not one empty seat. And she gave her speech, and then I was to get up and go up on the stage and escort her off the stage. And she said, now what's on the agenda? And I said, well, there's a reception at the Upton House. We charged $125, and we had 250 people come. Her fee was $40,000.
Yeah.
And she donates that to her favorite charity, which was not the Harriet Taylor Upton Association. But when we came back, I said, it's going to be a photo reception. So she was to stand in front of the fireplace in the library and have her picture taken with every person that was there. She said, we're coming back in this Chevy Lumina. She said, who did you work with to have this reception? And I said, it was Kara, and that was her secretary. That was all that was said. Fine. So she came, and people had to have a card. They had to be, you couldn't just show up. You had to have been approved prior to that. It was like 2 years in the making, and I had to work with Secret Service and the FBI and so forth. It was a cool experience. After, in her second book, she made mention that she came to Warren, Ohio, and she spoke for the Upton Society. We're the Upton Association, but if she calls us the Upton Society, hey, that's okay with me. And she spoke at the Buick Opera House. She knew it had something to do with a car and something to do with music. Before COVID, grade school students toured the Upton House. It was part of the curriculum for Trumbull County Schools. And now we're trying our best to get back to that. We had a grant for the buses and so forth, and we're working with the superintendent of schools to try to bring that back. Probably the most meaningful thing the Upton Association has done was to bring Harriet back home. As you might know, I've been up here a few minutes now, I'm the hokey one on the board. And I said, it's not right that her ashes are buried in Pasadena, California, when she never wanted to leave Warren. So the board humors me. Okay, go ahead, see what you can do. So we could not use attorneys in Warren or in Ohio. We had to use attorneys in California. Well, it just so happened none of us knew an attorney in California. So I was put in touch with this attorney through the cemetery in Pasadena. And he and I had this really cool conversation. And he said he was into historic preservation. I said, oh, so are we. We saved this house and yada, 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 yada. And he was also into antique cars. Well, I'm not into antique cars. My dad said I should have never owned a car. The only thing I know is you put gas in it once in a while. If you lift up the hood, it looks good to me, just put it back down. I don't know anything about it, nor do I want to. But if he's interested in antique cars, so am I. I said, oh, that's really interesting. Do you own an antique car? Yes, he owned a Packard. I said, do you know where the first Packard car was built? No. I said, Warren, Ohio. Now I'm on his Christmas card list. Woohoo! We worked back and forth. It was probably a year and a half working with the California courts and the cemetery and so forth and so on. And he called and said, we have our day in court, and I will call you as soon as it's over. He called and he said, what should have taken 2 minutes took almost a half hour. Our case was presented in front of a female judge. The night before, she went online to be certain we were legitimate and to find out about this Harriet Upton. She printed everything out, gave copies to everybody in the court, and she approved us. And she said if it were not for people, women like Harriet, she would not be on the bench. 3 weeks later, Marty, my mailman, rang my doorbell. He said, I have a package for you. I said, oh, Harriet's home, hot dog. So we had a Victorian memorial service with a bagpipe player, and we had 100 mourners. We also have the Women's Park, which is located right across the street from the Upton House. And we met in the Women's Park, and then we were dressed in, I had a top hat and appropriate garb. And we came across, and her grave was prepared in the back, in the gardens of her home, and that's where her ashes are. And the judge flew from California to attend that service. So he made friends on the West Coast. Now that judge has retired, and she now gives lectures to groups on Harriet Taylor Upton. So it's pretty cool. The Upton House is a labor of love, and we thoroughly enjoy it. We have become an asset to Warren and the community, and we are respected, and people respect what we're trying to do. I want to share one more thing with you. If are we good with time?
Plenty of time.
I am in charge of the house. I'm the houseboy. And I've done all of the painting on the interior of the house. And it keeps me off the streets. My wife says it's my second home. While I was doing some work in one of the bedrooms upstairs, I was taking wallpaper off, and there was like a bulge in the paper. And I had a steamer, and so I carefully worked around that, and I found these letters. And they are from Agnes to John. And I would like to read those to you, if I may. Is that okay? Mm-hmm. Dearest John, I went to the door today, and the postman delivered a partridge in a pear tree. What a delightful gift. I couldn't have been more surprised. With dearest love and affection, Agnes. Dear John, today the postman brought your very sweet gift. Just imagine, 2 turtle doves. I'm just delighted at your very thoughtful gift. They are just adorable. All my love, Agnes. Dear John, oh, aren't you the extravagant one? Now I must protest. I don't deserve such generosity. 3 French hens. They are just darling, but I must insist. You're just too kind. Love, Agnes. Dear John, today the postman delivered 4 calling birds. Now really, they are beautiful, but don't you think enough is enough? You're being too romantic. Affectionately, Agnes. Dearest John, what a surprise! Today, the postman delivered 5 golden rings, 1 for each finger. You're just impossible, but I love it. Frankly, John, all those squawking birds were beginning to get on my nerves. All my love, Agnes. Dear John, when I opened the door, there were actually 6 geese a-laying on my front steps. So you're back to the birds again, huh? Those geese are huge. Where will I ever keep them? The neighbors are complaining and I can't sleep through the racket. Please stop. Cordially, Agnes. John, what's with you and those birds? 7 swans a-swimming. What kind of joke is this? There's bird doo-doo all over the house and they never stop the racket. I'm a nervous wreck. I can't sleep all night. It's not funny. So stop with those birds. Sincerely, Agnes. Okay, Buster. I think I prefer the birds. What am I going to do with 8 maids a-milking? It's not enough with all those birds and 8 maids a-milking, but they had to bring their own cows. There is poop all over the lawn, and I can't move around in my own house. Just lay off. Ag. Hey, what are you? Some kind of nut? Now there's 9 pipers playing. And do they play? They never stopped chasing those maids since they got here yesterday morning. The cows are upset and are stepping all over those screeching birds. No wonder they screech. What am I going to do? The neighbors have started a petition to evict me. You'll get yours. From Ag. You creep. Now there's 10 ladies dancing. I don't know why I call them ladies. Now the cows can't sleep and they've got diarrhea. My living room is covered with poop. The commissioner of buildings has subpoenaed me to give cause why the building shouldn't be condemned. I'm calling the police on you. One who means it, Ag. Listen, idiot. What's with the 11 lords a-leaping? All 234 of the birds are dead. I hope you're satisfied, you rotten swine. Your sworn enemy, Miss Agnes McAllister. Dear sir, this is to acknowledge your latest gift of 12 fiddlers fiddling, which you have seen fit to inflict on our client, Miss Agnes McAllister. The destruction, of course, was total. All correspondence should come to our attention. If you should attempt to reach Miss McAllister at Happy Dale Sanitarium. The attendants have instructions to shoot you on sight. With this letter, please find attached a warrant for your arrest. Thank you. Now, how many of you believe I found those behind me? It was a pleasure to be here today.
Thank you.